live. Cindy, I'm giving you host, and then you can go ahead and record.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Reeves. I'm the Washington County Director and Chair of the Long Range Planning Committee. And we come together tonight to talk about ice crossings, and I know it's a bit of a touchy subject for some, but I want to start out by just sort of giving you a lay of the land and the history of how we got here and why we're talking about it now. So starting in the 1970s, VAST succeeded with legislation to have the state of Vermont provide funding through snowmobile registrations. This allowed VAST to receive 85% of the funding for trails and began the statewide snowmobile trails program budget. 2002, VAST succeeded with legislation to have the state of Vermont provide 100% funding through snowmobile registrations to help VAST provide trails liability insurance, minus the small amount of funds going to Forest Parks and Recreation to manage the funds. The negotiation with the state was successful because the state did not want to actively insure VAST trails themselves. In 2010, we had the tragic accident on Lake Dunmore, in which 3 people were killed, a father, his daughter, and his granddaughter. There were 6 people involved, 3 snowmobiles. In 2014, the lawsuits that arose out of that situation were settled. Snowmobiles, it was determined snowmobiles were led onto the lake by a hard trail, but the trail itself did not cross the lake. There was a sign put out that pointed to a destination that was on the other side of Lake Dunmore. There was also a yellow VAST arrow pointing out onto the lake from the fishing access area where riders went onto the water. The case was settled because the trail leading to the lake and the false sense of security the riders had that if VAST led them to the lake, we had assured them it was safe. As I said, 3 people were killed, including a 3-year-old. All lives were, it was tragic regardless of age. And from that, attorneys provided us a letter after the settlement, which was attached in the stuff that was sent out to people, sort of laying out how we could reduce our liability. So over the course of 2014 and 2015, the company asked us to close ice crossings and verbal communication, and the VAST Trails Committee officially took up the item and voted unanimously to close all ice crossings. And I believe the minutes of those meetings were included in what was sent out earlier. In 2015, the VAST Board of Directors agreed with the Trails Committee, but votes to allow some clubs some time to work on reroutes. At this time, all ice crossings needed to be signed to show a route around the body of water at the closest junction to the body of water. The clubs also were required to provide, before the beginning of each season, a photo proof that each of these junctions, the ice signs were supposed to be sent to Matt before the beginning of the season. The winter of 2017, the VAST executive director met with Governor Scott at a Vermont Outdoor Recreation Council meeting and talk about the state of Vermont insuring VAST regarding trails liability. The governor said he would look into it, but it didn't sound promising. The winter of 2018, a man had an accident in East Montpelier and sued VAST. The insurance company settles the summer of 2020, this last year, and decides not to renew our liability insurance. VAST appealed and provided information about the new Safety Ambassador program. The insurance company decided they would renew, but increased VAST liability a total of $52,000 to $177,000. And as part of that, the reason he sued is because he said he didn't sign the waiver, didn't read the waiver, and it was signed for him. So in the winter of 2018, in another accident in Morrisville, the guy sued VAST and the insurance company settled. And this time they decided to increase liability insurance another $42,000. Early last winter in 2020, the VAST insurance company and VAST attorney both sent letters that we had to cross. We had to close all ice crossings. January 2021, we started talking. We met with the Vermont Agency of Financial Regulation, Vermont Department of Forest Parks Recreation, and the Vermont Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding state bodies of water being considered highways. They explained that they're only deemed state highways for law enforcement reasons only. They also informed us that if people of their own accord use the fishing access to ice fish, they are responsible for their own safety. The state is not. VAST asked what they do if someone wants to hold an event on a frozen body of water. They replied the state requires them to hold insurance and sign a contract indemnifying the state of Vermont. It's similar to the contract we signed for all our trails that are on state lands. So we looked back, we saw that in 2014 and 15, it was decided that we would give clubs until 2017 to find reroutes around the ice and to also provide the signage and stuff. And we found that clubs haven't been doing this. Because of where we are with the insurance, we needed to start looking into how we handle this going forward. Roger, you had a good post on your Facebook page that you run that I thought was very fair and generated some good discussion. And that's the type of discussion we want to look at here. How do we do this the easiest way possible to reduce VAST liability going forward? Now, I want to say that, like most of you, I believe that you're right. It's my responsibility when I go onto a trail, but that's not the world we live in, unfortunately. We're required to have insurance, and our insurance company has standards and requirements for how we operate our system. So that's why we're here today, to discuss how we go forward with this. Cindy, do you have anything you want to add before we go on?
Sure. I just would just clarify a couple of points. I've gone to the governor twice, not just once, and met with he and his leadership team regarding this issue. And the second accident in Morrisville, they didn't just raise our rates, they actually dropped us again, like they had the year before, and we had to beg to get back. And they did it at the increased rate that Mark told you. I think, yeah, the issue here is not that no one has, that people have not gone through the ice since Dunmore and sued us. The issue here is that literally we are on very thin ice with one insurance company in the whole United States that will insure us. And the state of Vermont has no interest in insuring us. I think the only way that they would even consider it would be to take this organization over and be part of state government under Fish and Wildlife or something like that. And which would take all the decision making out of your hands. So this has been so I agree that, Roger did a very, very good job, but there's also a lot of information that maybe, we had talked about at board meetings that he didn't have. So because I just read it again, there were a lot of questions about some of the things that Mark just stated too. And so this isn't just something because I have nothing to do that and I hope you all don't feel like the VAST office feels that way, that we're just trying to find something to punish people, because that's not what we do. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Cindy, can I add something?
Sure, Pat.
It's not really just a liability question. The fact is, with another claim, we'll probably be uninsurable, period. And with no insurance, we're all done statewide. So it's not a club here or a club there. It's the entire state we've got to be considering us.
Right. And I want to say we've looked at that too as we've started to try to plan for the future, knowing that our resources to be insured are slim to none, other than one company. We've also started looking at what is known as captive insurance, self-insurance, seeing if that could be an option for us going forward. It's very expensive. I mean, we have to, but a lot of companies do that, and we're lucky here in Vermont. We have some of the top experts in the world on this type of insurance. And that would allow us to set some of our own rules, but it's not something we can do overnight. We all wish that we weren't in such a litigious society where we have to protect this much on us, especially in something that we enjoy doing. I've been across ice crossings. I've in a number of places. None of us would choose this if we had other choices. But we're looking for solutions. And out of Roger's discussion on the Facebook page, there was a lot of things that we've talked about. Again, stopping at the junction ahead of time, making sure they're off the maps, making sure that the signs state solidly, Vast Trail ends here. All of that has been suggested there, those are what we've had under consideration. And we've wanted to make sure that we have everybody who's involved to, again, give their input on how they would want to see us work towards reducing the liability and maintaining insurance as long as we can. So with that, we'll start with questions.
I have a question about the trails that are corridor trails, obviously, are vast trails. What about the secondary trails, the club trails? So if the corridor trail stops and the secondary trail takes over and goes to the edge of the water.
In any trail, I would consider that, and Cindy, you can jump in, but I would consider any trail that Vast pays to have groomed, that's part of your contract, whether it's a corridor or a secondary, is part of our system. So those are the ones we want to make sure people understand. Do not go to the water. Do not bring you just for water crossings.
Unfortunately, it goes farther than that because our insurance covers clubs. So even if you have a trail that you call it a club trail, and even if you don't groom it, you still call it a club trail. That's our liability insurance. That's the same policy. So the only way that you would absolutely be able to avoid liability or have Vast avoid liability is turn it into a private trail. Like, someone lives down there, kind of private trail, and not a club trail and not a Vast trail, unfortunately.
So in a situation I'm thinking about on Lake Champlain and Benson, where the trail crosses Stony Point Road, a pair of signs there that says Vast Trail ends here. I would suggest two, one on each side. And then on the other side of the road where the trail continues onto the lake, two signs that says private trail, and no other signs on that trail at all.
Yes, that's what we're getting at. And we want to be clear, we're not trying to legislate, rule make someone's behavior. If you live on a lake and you use it to cross to go somewhere to ice fit, we're not trying to legislate that out of existence. Our system can't appear to lead you and say, here's the way to get from point A to point B, use the lake. That's what we're trying to reduce.
Right. So, Mark, if I could just add, so basically these trails can't just lead to the lake. If they lead to a business, or lead to a body of water, if they lead to a business that's on that body of water, you're leading them to that business. So like, for instance, if you're talking about Island Pond, and there's the motel, there's restaurants, there's the gas station, you're leading them to that business. But if you have a trail that's 3 or 6 miles long that specifically just goes down to the lake, that's different. And that's really kind of what happened with Dunmore, even though that because we led them to the lake, and that was the argument. So somebody has to be responsible. So then the other thing too is you got to think about the landowners, right? So whose liability, I guess if they're opening their property and they're not charging a fee, they're covered by the state anyway for their liability.
Cindy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Sean Selby from Just Esters. I guess my biggest issue, obviously, I think everybody on here, we can't exist up here without the lake crossings. All of our businesses, our restaurants, everything exists. We have so many lakes. And you're looking at water crossings, but the issue is insurance. That's what we need to address. If somebody goes out and hits a groomer or misses a bridge, it's going to be the same boat. The insurance is going to go up. This water crossings is just a small piece of the puzzle here. And I think Vast and we need to look at the insurance issue, whether it goes through the state and we become a state entity, whatever. But this water crossing is such a minute problem, and we're looking at the whole issue of the insurance.
Sean, you're correct. We've talked about that, and when I mentioned we're looking at other alternatives to insure ourselves, but it takes time, and to keep insurance until we could move to something else, and that's why we're trying to do something like this, reduce the water crossings and all of that. But understand that completely, because I can't talk too much about the settlements before, but in both of those, we didn't have control of the attorney hired, who wasn't necessarily a snowmobile knowledgeable attorney. That was the insurance company. The expert that they used was not to Vast's choosing or liking. That's something we would have control over. We'd have more control eventually, but it takes time and money to get there. And so we sort of got to hold on to what we have until we can make a switch. So I'm on the same exact page as you about insurance is the issue, not just there's many other parts of the insurance that are part of the problem.
And that's my point, is I think we need to not look at this water crossing and take it off the table, but focus entirely on the insurance. This water crossing is going to devastate multiple clubs and financially businesses and restaurants. It's going to devastate anyone. We're going to be in trouble. So let's not look at the water crossing, look at the root of the problem, the insurance, and work on that, not the water crossings, is my point.
So Sean, I can just add, so we have been working on the insurance issue for years now. The issue is that there's only one company. We're trying to build up enough funds that we maybe could self-insure or something like that. The insurance company knows that there's risk. That's why we pay $220,000 a year for insurance. There is risk. There is risk that somebody could run into a groomer. What they look at it is ice crossings is the biggest risk we have. They have told us we have to close them. That's all I have to say. I don't want them closed. I've ridden across lakes too. This isn't like this vendetta to close lakes. We know what it was going to do. That's why, the Trails Committee voted unanimously to do this and gave clubs years to figure it out. We ride around all kinds of things, not just bodies of water. We ride around mountains. We have to reroute around angry landowners or landowners that change. Our trails are continuously changing. This is a very hard conversation, and
Cindy, could I add something?
Sure,
please?
Brian. Yeah.
We can't go around Lake Memphremagog without going down Main Street in Newport or going. How far south would you have to go to do that? Coventry?
Yeah, it's it's 9 miles roughly.
And there's no businesses. I don't think there's a business on either side of the lake that's within a mile of the shore. So we can't direct. You close the trail, and I suppose if people want to cross at their own risk, sign to say cross the lake at your own risk. I don't know if that would save an insurance problem or not.
We've thought about, well, would a resolution be to continue our trail down there? You can't say that putting a trail to a business is any more important than putting it to the members that pay their dues. So, we have people that live all along the lake, and just the conversation on that Facebook group showed how many people that aren't even from this area that care about this lake crossing. So can we put a trail down to the landowner down there, to the last the last landowner that's down there and end it there. And if people proceed, then they proceed. My most important thing that I want to make sure happens is that that landowner is protected. So if we can continue to run those trails right to that landowner, then so be it. I think that'll work, and we're happy to put up whatever signage we need. But I think Cindy's made it very clear, you know, and she's got a point that it doesn't matter if you have a billboard there with 3 pages of legal information. People, one, are not going to read it, and two, they're going to be able to win around that anyway if they have a good enough lawyer. I think kind of going back and piggybacking on what Sean's saying is we need to get the state involved as far as, and don't talk to the governor, because the governor's got a bunch of other things on his plate. That's why I got Brian Smith here, our local legislator, that hopefully can spearhead this and put us in the right direction. If we can have state statutes out there that protect our landowners from any liability, then why can't we have a state statute that protects VAST from liability? And I get it. If it would be nice to cover VAST as a whole, no matter what. I don't know if that's possible, but if we could at least be protected from liability in this case, it's a step forward. You know, there's plenty of us that are willing to do the grassroots effort to go down to Montpelier and testify and do what we need to do to get this going. We're just, as you know, we're very, very passionate about this topic. We do not want to lose our lake crossings. We can't lose our lake crossings. And it's going to completely devastate the sport up here as we know it if that happens. So, I mean, we don't want to fight against VAST. We want to fight with VAST and fight in the right direction.
That's a good point, Roger, and thank you for bringing it up, because I think you're right. I think a multifaceted approach is what we need. We need to work on the insurance, as we've mentioned. We need to work on legislation if that's what it takes to expand liability protection, because we know that there's a landowner liability statute in the state that protects people who allow their land to be used for recreation purposes. So if we can expand that, I think a multifaceted approach. In the meantime, though, we do have to make sure that we clearly state the VAST Trail does not cross the water. It ends at John Smith's house. You want to go down to visit John Smith and you guys decide to go out ice fishing, that's your problem. We need to make sure that that's known. We need to make sure that clubs are following the rules that we set up before about the signings being sent preseason every year. That's what we really need. And I think that we're very close to agreeing with a lot of the stuff that was on that discussion. Carmen, I'll get to you next. So I think you're right. I think we need a multifaceted approach to this coming from several directions. I don't disagree. Carmen, or Kurt Marshall, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So, we have Star Lake here in Belmont. And for years, what I always did at the beginning of the season is I would go down with a 12-inch long drill bit on a hammer drill, and I would check that ice, and we would not open the lake until we had 6 inches minimum. Okay. And we never had an issue. I mean, for years we had snowmobile drag races with multiple trucks, trailers, snowmobiles all over the place. Never had an issue because we're always checking the ice. And that might be another way is to, if the clubs can, if your trail, whether it's a half-mile long lake crossing or a 2.5 mile long lake crossing, if you had to go out and do test bores at the beginning of the season and record those test bores, so we have 6 inches of solid ice or 4 inches of solid ice, because we know that 4 inches is safe. We always played to the safe side because we did take our Class 4 groomer to keep that trail somewhat flat on the lake. But it's just one more thing possibly we could do.
Jim, I'll get to you next, and then Stan. I would say that's just putting more liability on you if you're actually saying, yeah, the ice is safe. That's just asking, that's giving a higher liability load for you. Jim?
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's opening it up even more because you're telling them, it's okay.
Dan Schwinner?
Yeah, so the question I have
Tony?
is that obviously, or not, it doesn't always happen, but we do open trails before ice builds, right? There are certain years when the conditions are such that we don't get ice on the lakes, but we do get snow and the trails are open. How do they deal with those businesses and those accesses when the lake just isn't frozen?
How does who deal with it?
Well,
The businesses.
you're talking about the businesses up on Memphis Magog and some of the other people who have direct.
Oh, I see what you're saying. How do people get to those businesses when they
Yeah,
can't?
how do you get to those?
Anyway.
To those, you know, it's like on Island Pond. That crossing on Island Pond, there's a way around it. So if the lake isn't frozen yet, and I've been there early in the season when we've got snow in the middle of December, and on the 15th or 16th we've got open trails, but the lake really isn't frozen yet. Or you get a thin skim of ice and then it snows on top of it and it takes forever to build ice. But like at Island Pond, there's a way around it. Is there any alternatives on Memphis Magog, or is there nothing?
Well, all the businesses have access. They're not on the lake.
We have
They're not out on the ice. They're on
Jim,
the
let
shore.
Roger.
we have detours around all the bodies of water in our area, but that's not the point. You know, those detours are there for people. I mean, there are people that in the middle of the season when the ice is 3 feet thick don't feel comfortable going across the lake.
Right.
I go across it when there's like 2 inches, you know, but it's all everybody's comfort level. So those detours are there and they're signed for that situation. We are going to lose a lot of interest in even coming to our area, especially, and I'll use Country Riders for as an example. Right now, I mean, really up until maybe a day or so ago, if you wanted to go around the lake to get to Country Riders territory, you would have had the trailer there, unless, and Steve, and I'm not throwing Steve or North Country Mountaineers under the bus, but they just have limited snow coverage down there. So Country Riders that has all this snow and all these trails open up in the mountains now are inaccessible unless you trailer there. Whereas now, with the lake being the way that it is, if somebody wants to leave from Island Pond, they can zoom across the lake if they feel comfortable, and they can get there in no time. So it's more of a convenience factor and a variety of different options.
Tony LeMay? Tony?
So, I mean, I'm from Country Riders, but so when I go on the Vast online map, I can basically find a trail on the map across the lake, whether it's X'd out or not. There shows 3 definite trails on Magog. Why can't those just be eliminated off the Vast app? Because right now, even if we say, you know, the trail ends here, we're still showing a way across the lake. And to me, if I went through the ice at this point, and I would look at that, it'd be the first thing I would say is, well, there's a line across the lake. So I don't necessarily think that it needs to be on the Vast map. If that comes off the Vast map, and then we do like Roger says, get you to the last landowner, we're not giving them a direction across the lake at all.
I think I can answer.
Go ahead,
or
Cindy.
make some suggestions. I think, Tony, that I think if you turned it into a private trail at the last junction, you write Vast Trail ends here, and it's just becomes a private trail that the locals that live on that use to get up to the trail system. And it also comes off the map. I mean, it shouldn't be on, I mean, it's going to have to come off anyway. So I agree with you that that would reduce it anyway. I mean, because right now, currently those are open. So that's why it's on the map. And then I just wanted to add to Kurt, your suggestion about checking the ice, not just even about liability. We can't even get all the clubs to send us the signs. They're supposed to send us a copy of a picture of the sign every year that shows the reroute around. So that's going, some clubs are really great about it and some just have not been, and that's been a requirement. But I think that if you could turn it into a private trail, just like the ones that lead to other people's houses.
But in the case of Country Riders, I mean, our nearest junctions are quite a ways away from the lake. And because of the proximity of where the trails hit the lake versus where we could make a loop, I don't see how that's feasible.
Well, I was just looking at I'm sharing my screen, Mark, if you'll indulge me. So we're talking about, so it's not really a loop. we're talking about, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
So we're talking about, like, there's already a sign at this junction here, which, intersections, that says, you know, there's a reroute. I guess you don't need the intersections, takes up too much space. That there's a reroute around. So this would then just be a private trail. It would just say private trail. There's no, we're not cutting off any kind of loop unless you drive down this road and come back that way. Bless you, Raymond.
Well, then what about coverage to the landowners?
The landowners are covered by state statute for allowing people on their property and not charging. So as long as your club is not giving landowners TMAs as gifts for thanking them, because that's part of the payment. But there are state laws that say that if landowners open their land to recreation, they are then, and do not charge for it and do not do anything with malicious intent to hurt someone, that they are covered by state statute and they cannot be sued. So if you just had it as a private trail, you're not leading them down to the lake.
Cindy, excuse me a second. Somebody's got some a television playing pretty loud,
Tim Park, you need to mute.
and I can't hear because there's some background noise.
Why it did that?
So North Country Mountaineers, I'll mute you
question,
guys. I just muted North Country Mountaineers. You guys can unmute yourselves if you want when you're ready to. Tim, I'm gonna mute you too. Okay. Sorry, Brian.
I got a question, Cindy.
Oh, yeah.
Ron from Country Riders.
Yeah.
So if we did that, change in the trail section to a private trail, now are we still going to be funded for it?
No. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it just to say no, we're not giving you any money. It's because if we paid for that trail, it's still a vast trail. If we're paying you to maintain a trail, I would think that was, I mean, that Mark, you brought that up the other day. Did you want to address that, Mark Reeves?
Did I bring that up the other day? No, it would not be paid for. I mean, that's, unfortunately, we looked at the mileage, how it would impact the mileage. And we realize that's a hit, and we'd have to find some way to mitigate that for you, to make the hit less.
So if we lose that amount of mileage, you're going to let us add mileage?
I don't have a solution yet. We don't have a solution yet, but
Well,
again,
if you rerouted, if you could, build like a trail,
There's
I
no
know we're not-
rerouting.
there's no rerouting.
There's no rerouting.
Well, if we can talk V-Trans into letting us open the old airport road trail again for North Country Mountaineers, that would save a huge amount of, that would go down, basically loops right down below the lake.
Is that this trail here? Yeah, why is this trail, what's up this trail? There's
That
no,
was
there's an airport, but
That was the restaurant at the airport. And Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, but that trail did at one point continue up to Airport Road. If you go north from there, it would connect, it crossed Airport Road and connected into Trail 14A, just on the edge of the lake. So it was a little bit better. But
so this is just a trail to nowhere? I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I'm just curious, because if there's not a restaurant, I just clicked on restaurants. There's no restaurant there anymore?
No, the restaurant is now closed.
Okay. This is
The state stopped us from traveling on asphalt.
Oh, yeah.
so this is one of the things that we wanted to give clubs time for when we originally when the board of directors originally voted on this. It wasn't like an immediate. It was 3 years, I believe. It was between 2014 and 2017 or something like that, to give clubs time to look for routes around and other things. Again, we're not doing this to hurt clubs. We realize we're going to have to mitigate. If you lose some mileage, we're going to have to figure out a way to make that a soft landing. Again, we're looking at other areas, as Roger suggested, the legislative route, and also, as we were speaking about, in a different insurance route. But we need to do something. or we will be in the same situation of losing our insurance, and then there'll be a time when they'll say, no, not even another $50,000 jump are we going to insure you. So that's why we're here. And again, I appreciate all of your input. Maybe you look at where it becomes a private trail, where you absolutely have to go to private trail. I mean, I don't know, but again, we wouldn't be doing this year anyway. It would be before next season. So we have time to work on things, but we do have to have buy-in from everyone who's going to say, okay, we have to have our signs up saying it's a, Vast Trail stops here. We have to have these pictures in before the season. We have to have all the clubs do that. Again, that's one of the reasons why we're at this point, because all clubs were supposed to do this and not all of them were. So that's the other thing we got to get out of this is compliance with whatever we come up with. And I also understand from experience that if you make it really onerous, you're not going to get compliance. So we don't want to make it overly onerous. We want to do the easiest route possible to achieve our goal. Now, we'll never get, as everyone has pointed out, we'll never get rid of all liability we have, and it's not possible. But we need to mitigate it and reduce it as much as possible. So,
I got a question.
Kurt, and then North Country, go ahead.
So back to the if we turn it into a private trail, like for us in Mount Holly, we have a very short link, that we would close down. And as a quote unquote private trail, we cannot groom that. The clubs cannot groom that trail, correct?
Right.
Absolutely. So, for us, I mean, if it turned into a private trail, we're allowed, and we use it as a private quote unquote trail to the lake, it's going to get quite beat up. And, for us, it's no big deal because we've only got literally a few hundred yards to get there. But for, those guys up in Derby area, I mean, they've got miles to get there. So that's going to be a few miles of whoops from hell after a few weeks.
Well, again, I think you'd have to look at where your private trail starts.
Correct. But with that being said, okay, so if you make it all the way down to the last landowner, I mean, aren't we kind of leading the horse to the water there? If that last landowner is only, say 500 or even, if it was a half mile or even 100 yards, is that going to be enough to protect us? Because it's not going anywhere. We're just going down to get them to that private trail.
Right. So, hey, this is Steve Forrest from the Mount Holly Snowflyers. So like on either side of the lake, we have a landowner. So our landowner technically is on the water's edge. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So what we're saying though is that we would not have to get permission, or we wouldn't have a vast permission slip to give them anymore, because that would say it was a vast trail. So then the landowner then has to say, yeah, it's okay for this to be a private trail. They're going to need some sort of documentation or something in their hands to say, yeah, I'm okay with having a private trail on my property. You know what I mean? Because as it is now, we have landowners that are a little eerie even about signing this piece of paper. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, because I mean,
So
I guess,
we would have to give them something from the state saying the state is okay with, or it's showing them that the state, gives them the backing.
Yeah. Well, there's a state statute involved that indemnifies landowners who allow people to use their land for recreation and don't charge for it.
We actually have a brochure
Correct.
on our
So-
website. There's a brochure on our website, and we have them printed at the office that we could send you some to hand out to landowners that talk about that liability.
Yep, which I have, and I've done the same thing, but like that doesn't, to me, even as a landowner, I would look at it and go, that really doesn't, a brochure's great, but that doesn't reinsure me that nothing's, someone's not going to come after me and sue me. So we'd have to get something from the state that would, be a little bit more state official, I guess, is what I'd be looking for.
Go ahead, Jim.
I got a couple items. Number one is the state, you're saying that landowner can't be sued, but he's still going to have to defend himself. That's one of the issues. But I talked to, and Matt has come up with some ideas too. like at Lake Memphremagog, what happened if that trail was considered a local trail to access the nearest road to the lake, which allows people along that road to get access to the trail? At that road, that's where the trail ends. Vast Trail ends at that road when it meets that road. There's no, and then at the last intersection before that trail, if it was considered a dead end trail and it's a local to access that road, we're not going to stop people from crossing bodies of water. But that gets you part of the way there, I think.
Jim, George from North Country Mountaineers, we talked about that recently, and I was told that with the legalities out there, I don't know what VAS has for lawyers, but there's some sharp ones out there beyond what we're using. But if we groom to those points you're talking about, they can prove that we've led you to that entrance to the lake. And that's where they're sticking on it. But the insurance companies, I don't know who's talking with them, but I have a pretty stiff business we're working with, and we've had some issues. But you have to talk with them and listen to their dialogue. Then you got to give them some of your own. And somehow somebody's got to commit to what is and what isn't. And right now, I think I can go to Newport with the groomer, and I can go right to the east side. And I can tell you, when you leave the east side, you get on your sled and you stay on the land. But the lake is right there, about 10 feet to your right. So if I can get some insurance company to look at that and say, well, you're keeping them on the land and it's well marked, you're covered. But somehow I think we're missing the boat here. Somebody is not pushing these guys to give us some leeway. If we can prove to them we got signs up, and we do, and we've given Cindy the pictures of the damn things. So it's not like we don't do it. But somebody's got to step up here and get these insurance companies to say, what do you want? And we want to be covered.
Well, I did ask them, and they want the ice crossings closed. That's the letter that was sent out to everybody. I wanted to also point out too about legislative. I think if you want to move into a legislative discussion, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I do think that we need more help. I mean, the governor is just, they are just not interested in the state agencies. But I will say that this is something the governor's council has been talking about for years. And so, Representative Brian Smith is new to the governor's council, but just to let him know that this is something that has been discussed by the governor's council for years. So the best avenue would be to go through the governor's council, and then to also probably get a hold of the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council, because VAST going to them and saying how important we are and you need to cover us is not working. If all the other trail organizations, which they're very interested in also getting liability insurance, were covered by the state of Vermont, that would be a possible solution. But this has been talked about a lot. The problem is that there's only one insurance company in the United States that will cover us. And it's the same insurance company that covers the state of Vermont. It's the same insurance company that covers all the ski areas. They take on the biggest liability, and they charge a boatload.
Try custom cropping. Anyways, I got an individual in our club that he lives right on the Salem Derby, the pond. He's got 5 TMAs. He jumps on his sled and goes towards the trail that you don't groom, but he takes the pond and he goes through. How's that looked at with a lawyer?
What are you trying to say? We know people will ride across lakes regardless, whether they're members of VAST or not.
He owns a house right there on the pond. I mean, that's his access to the VAST trail. Go across the pond.
we don't lead him to it. It's his choice. If that's
But
what
you-
he wants to do instead of trailer, we have not led him to the pond.
But you got your TMA on his sled.
Right, but we can't be looking.
That doesn't matter.
That's not what's the question. The question is, and what was the root of the lawsuit at Dunmore, was that we led them and made them believe that it was an official trail, and that it was safe. Now, in reality, all of us here talking understand that any trail isn't 100% safe, no matter where it is. We realize that. But that's what they're saying. They don't want us having anything to do with an ice crossing. They just don't want anybody to get the idea that VAST says it's okay to go across the ice. We're not. We're not. That's why we want to put up signs saying no ice is safe ice. Trail stops here. You know, whatever else we have to do. And believe me, we've gone through 100 scenarios. You know, Island Pond, there's a parking area right on the beach, even though the trail runs through the parking lot. Well, they can get on the ice quick. The Lamoille Valley Rail Trail runs alongside Joe's Pond. Well, someone could hop on the ice there. So we realize there's not a perfect solution. We're trying for the best solution. And it's not going to cover 100%. We can only reduce what liability exposure we have. We can't eliminate it. And we're looking for the best solution.
So this is Steve Forrest from the Maui Snowflyers again. So if the insurance company has told us now that we cannot have a lake crossing, have they given us any input on like what their definition of that is? Like, as if the trail ends before, are they still going to count that? You know what I mean? Like, have they clearly said this to us that it is okay to have a private trail or a vast trail end and a private trail start near a trail that they insure? You know what I mean? So we may go to all this effort and then they still say a year from now, well, there's a private trail that's next to the vast trail, so nope, we won't insure you again. So I think those questions need to be asked to them before we put
I think that's a good point, Steve. Cindy, can you speak to that?
Yeah, we have asked. It can only be a private trail. It can't be a vast trail or a club trail because that's covered by our insurance.
Yep. But what I'm saying is that a year from now, they're going to change their policy and say, oh, the vast trail is next to a private trail that leads to a lake, and something happened on that private trail, so liability's going up again. You know what I mean? Like, are they set in stone to say, yes, this is okay, and you know what I mean? You're not going to go back on your word come a year from now. Does that make sense?
I don't have a crystal ball.
Well,
so
I understand that, but I think
I don't know.
Those sort of tough questions have to be asked.
They do have to be asked. Yeah.
Because we're going to put a lot of effort in to then all of a sudden a year from now have to revisit this and do it all over again. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I don't.
Potentially.
No. Yeah.
Potentially, just because, you know, it could be the next issue. I get what you're saying. You know.
Yeah, but we're trying to find a solution. And if we can get halfway there and appease people, if they came a year from now and said, nope, now everything has to close, that's bad. But I don't understand. Yeah.
Well, I get what he's saying right now. If we stop at a lake, they're saying, well, your trail leads there. It may not go on there. We're not going to cover you. But if we stop at a private trail that we know goes to a lake, are they going to say, well, it brings you to a trail that goes to a lake? It may not be your trail.
I think my understanding, not Cindy Luck thinks, my understanding is that if it is a private trail that has nothing to do with VAST, we're not leading them. We're leading to a private trail that people have access to get to their home. We don't cover those trails insurance wise, right? When somebody connects their home trail to our trails. So no, it wouldn't be a liability issue for us. I think if it's signed, vast trail ends here. You don't even say that there's an ice crossing. You know, you could say no ice is safe ice, vast trail ends here, whatever. But I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
I think we got it.
Hey, Mark.
Go ahead, Roger.
So I'm all for doing the private trail thing. I mean, I think in most cases we have instances where we can, groom within, several hundred yards of the lake and then do a ungroomed 3-foot mogul private trail through there, as long as the landowner's covered. But again, I agree with Steve Forrest's point. I mean, are we going to go through all this work? And I mean, are we really just trying to get around something that's not going to end up working in the first place? As we've seen before, we can get sued for all sorts of ludicrous things. So, I think again, we're losing track of what we really need to do and what the ultimate solution is. And Cindy, yes, the Governor's Council has discussed this a bunch of times, and I read every single minutes from every single meeting, but it's always about, are the ice crossings closed? When are we going to close the ice crossings? They need to close the ice crossings. It's not, well, have we contacted a legislator to talk to them about state statute changes? What are we going to do to get the state to defend us? How are we going to show the state that we're important enough to be defended? How are we going to protect our landowners? So I think that's what we need to focus on. If we focus on that now, that process is long enough, as you know, that it's going to take a year or two to get that to go through. But as Sean said before, we're focused on lake crossings, and those aren't even our issues. Our issues are improperly marked corners, bridges that aren't marked, et cetera, stop signs that are missing, that kind of stuff. And the clubs have been diligent this year, to try to fix that stuff. But lake crossings are not our issue. I mean, I'm knock on wood because I say that and something could happen tomorrow. But I mean, let's just look at the past and kind of and see what's really been going on. I do not, there's no doubt in my mind that we need to do something and make sure that VAST is protected liability wise. There's nothing worse than voting yes to a $50,000 insurance premium. I hate doing that. It sucks. And it's just another reason to jack the TMA price up. But the time has come to where representatives need to know, the senators need to know, the governor needs to know, we need help, or we're gonna start closing as it is.
Mm-hmm. Cindy, may I speak? I wish I hear what Roger said. I wish I knew more about what I'm supposed to be doing as a member of the Governor's Council. I would like to go to Scott's office instead of sitting on a Zoom machine with some representatives from VAST and sit down with Jane there as well. And it's got to get hashed out in Montpelier. We can talk about this all night, but if we can't get some support from the state somehow, we're wasting our time talking about it. Maybe not wasting our time, but we've got till next year to get something done. And I think we need to go to Montpelier and bring it to the governor's attention that he needs to pay more attention to it.
I think you're right. I think what it does do is it lets us coalesce around a direction and an answer and how we go forward. We've pointed out several times that it's a multiple prong approach. It might be something where we have to do the minimum to keep our insurance as it is for the next year or two until we can get to another place, till we get legislation passed, till we get some other type insurance. But it is something that will have to happen. Jim, Hill?
Well, another thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I was looking at the trails. One of the other things we could do that could help a little bit, it's not going to alleviate the problem, is if you look at our trails, we'll take Magog, for instance, you've got trail 105 on each side of the lake. So you're connecting the dots. Them trails on each side should probably have a different trail number. If you're dead ending them at the lake, they need to have different trail numbers. They should be feeder trails or something.
I think that's probably a good idea. Brian, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Well, I was just going to say that if someone would give me some direction and tell me who I need to go and see, and where I should go. I've been told where to go a number of times, but I need some clearer direction. So I'm willing to do whatever I can in Montpelier.
And we do have some really good lobbyists, Vermont Traditions Coalition, that I know I spoke to them personally, and they're very interested in this. And, you know, lake crossings are a tradition in Vermont, so they're all over it.
All right, Cindy, is there anything else what do we want to take away from this?
I just want to offer another added solution or something to add to it. And this came from Rial. Thank you, Rial. Is adding some language on our waiver. Waivers in Vermont are not very solid things. The Vermont Trial Lawyers Association has staunchly always fought the validity of waivers, and so they hold up about 50% of the time. But you could add something on there that, you know, by signing this, you're saying that you would not be crossing ice or water. As far as who to talk to, Brian, Roger suggested the Traditions Coalition, but the best person to talk to is our lobbyist, Frank Stanley. I think you know Frank. He used to actually be the lobbyist for the Traditions Coalition, and a guy that used to work for Frank is running the Traditions Coalition lobbying now. So you're probably better off talking to Frank. I think it is important for them to know how important VAST is. I know they know it's important. I know the governor knows that VAST is very important. It's why he just vetoed that bill. The Act 250 bill at the end of the session was because we called him. And so he does take us very seriously, and he is a motorized sports guy. The unfortunate thing is there are a lot of people in the legislature that don't like motorized sports. And that has, you know, turned against us in the last 20 years, as everybody knows. So, you know, Brian is going to have an uphill battle if he's going to try to do this as a Republican in that body. You know, newly appointed to transportation. You know, Brian, I know you've been a part of the legislature for a long time, but it is not an easy place to get things done when you're a Republican these days. So just don't, you know.
I found that out.
Yeah, what I'm saying is I'm telling you to I'm telling you to encourage Brian, but know that he's going to have a lot to have to go through. It's the same thing when I go in there. Yeah, I get a certain amount of respect from the people that like snowmobiling, but the majority of people in that house don't. And what people in Vermont don't understand is that the governor does not make decisions. It's the folks that sit in that state, the legislators. And so when
That's
people
right.
vote for people and they go, oh yeah, that's my neighbor, or my dad always voted for that person or whatever, they don't understand who they're actually voting for. So
Well,
it will be
what I'm hearing now is climate control and climate issues and gasoline, and they don't like fossil fuels being burned. That's
I mean,
a roadblock.
I can tell you folks right now, I'm in there battling all the time just to preserve landowners. They are after landowners. Right now, this Act 250, this trail stuff they're trying to do is basically allowing state on private lands. And it is,
Right.
I'm in meetings almost daily about it. So, you know, I know this is a completely separate issue, but I just wanted to let you know that we are very active in there. It's just,
Cindy, what have other states done? Have other states come up against this?
so Brian, we are one of the only states in the United States that is run by a private nonprofit association. The snowmobile industry in all the states that surround us, and most of the states in the United States, are run by state government. So they're already sovereign. They have immunity. So that's why, you know, they can lead a trail to the lake. And if somebody goes through, they can say, well, we're sovereign. We told you that no ice is safe ice. We don't have ice crossings, and you decided to do it anyway. They can't sue the state. So that's why VAST is in the predicament it is. And that's why there's very few, you know, insurance companies that will take us on. Oh, there's one. So that's why we thought, like what Mark talked about, why we thought about, well, what would it take to be self-insured, you know, or have captive insurance? But you need millions in the bank to be self-insured, right? You'd need at least like 6 to 10 million in the bank just in case somebody sued you. Right now, we have a $3 million policy with a $6 million aggregate.
Well, send me our lobbyist's email and information, and I'll contact him and try to do something.
Okay, Brian.
At least keep this meeting going forward.
Mhm.
So Cindy, would
Yeah.
Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota, are those all state-run
Yes,
systems? Okay.
yep. Maine, New Hampshire, all of
Yep.
them. Yep,
Yeah, I
yep.
knew,
And
I
all
knew
those
those
out in the
states around
Midwest.
them, sir.
All the
Thank you.
Dakotas. Yep. Idaho, Washington.
I'm trying to think of any state or province that's not. Is there anything like us?
Oregon is similar.
Oregon is similar, but they have a lot of federal lands. Pennsylvania is like us.
Okay. Ooh, the Mecca, snowmobile Mecca of Pennsylvania. Ooh,
I know.
they get some good lake effect. Anyone else have anything to say? Again, this isn't the last time we'll talk. It's not the last time we'll communicate. We wanted to talk to people to get feelings, to understand, to get feedback. We also wanted to let people know that we are looking at other avenues, because we do understand how important the trails are. We don't want to see any trail closed, but we also know that if we lose this, we don't just lose the lake crossings, we lose any trail, all trails. So that's why it was important to get this back on track and moving along. Does anyone else have anything they want to ask or say?
I'll just add one real quick. This is not going to be on the board agenda. Okay. So this is like Mark said, I just want to reiterate what Mark just said. This is something that we need to spend some months talking about and devising some plans of moving forward. Nobody wants to close these. None of us want this.
So Cindy, are we going to put together some sort of committee or something to kind of review ideas or something like that? Just, you know what I mean? I heard a lot of good ideas, some ideas people didn't like. Is there a way that we're going to capture all this?
Yeah, so the Long Range Planning Committee, which Mark Reeves is the chair of, Jim Hill, Pat Poulin, Jeff Fay, myself, and Tim Mills as ex officio, because he's president of the association, and Matt Tatro are part of the Long Range Planning Committee. So that's the committee that's working on it. But we'll also now be adding it to the Governor's Council agenda again. Okay, so I think because of what Brian would like to do, that we will, and Pat Poulin is the chair of the Governor's Council.
Yeah.
And so we'll be adding that to, back to the agenda and helping Brian with some of that work. And then I think what we need to do is just have some more check-in meetings, like on progress.
Yeah, I was going to say probably because as far as, we're all busy. We all work. We all do this for nonprofit. It'd be nice that we kind of do these maybe once a month or whatever makes sense to keep it kind of.
I think we
forefront.
should. We
You know
should.
what I mean, because it's really important today to all of us, but 3 weeks from now we get caught up doing our things. So I think
why
it's
don't
important.
Why don't we plan on the Wednesday night at 5 o'clock after the board meeting? So the board meeting is always the fourth Monday. And then the fourth Tuesday, we have a Zoom with VAST meeting at 5. How about if we do the fourth Wednesday?
Sure.
We just have to be done by 7 because there's a county meeting at 7 that uses Zoom.
Right. So it basically would just, at that point, would be kind of like an update of where we're at or new ideas, that sort of thing, or what the board is, the chairs have kind of looked at.
All right,
Which I think would be good.
that makes sense.
Okay.
All right, well, I want to,
Roger, he's got his hand up.
Roger has his hand up. I didn't even see that.
It's a little blue one.
No, it's old. I've said enough. Thank you for your time.
Sorry. Anyone else?
Oh, I would say this, actually, I wanted to mention this. Of course, I have to say something else. I would like to know what Reno and Island Pond, and if would they have impacts on their trail system if the trail across the lake closed, that kind of stuff.
Well, I know that people come into the store all the time and asking me if the lake is safe. And I hate to say this, but I always tell them that the lake is not a trail. We have 3 ways around the lake. And myself, I'm just like everybody else. As soon as there's 3 inches of ice on the lake, I'm ripping across it. That's where I go. But anybody ever asks me if, where the trail goes, I have to show them. I have to show them that the trail goes across the lake. And they'll say, I know, but everybody's going across the lake. I can't tell you that the trail is across the lake. I just can't, because it's not the trail. And I was just looking on the vast map, and our trail does not, our trails all go around the lake. They do not lead to the lake.
Yeah, that's because when Dave Page was still alive, he decided to close that, or you guys decided, and those signs got put back in the groomer barn. So I just thought that probably what happened with all the turnover, I heard that the signs were back up or something, maybe on the other side of the lake.
Well, we put up the trail, we put up the signs that we were asked to put up, that, there's no safe lake crossing and stuff like that. And as of yesterday, we took down all those signs, and we're working on putting arrows to make sure that people understand that they can go around the lake.
Thanks, Rita.
All right, anyone else?
Jeff had his hand up, sorry.
Oh, Jeff?
Well, in listening to a lot of this discussion, it sounds like we've all kind of reached the agreement that if we end the vast trail at point X and then beyond point X, it's a private trail, we placate 95% of the people that have water in their backyard or in their county or whatever. And Matt and I talked the other night after the meeting, and Jim brought it up as well, that whatever trail is on either side of the lake cannot be the same number. It shouldn't even be anywhere close to the same number. So those are two things that we can start doing that right now. We can renumber those trails, and we can end the trail, and then it becomes a private trail. And to me, that doesn't need to wait until next year. But that's just my 2 cents.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Who has permission to use a private trail, and how do you get it?
Private trail, it doesn't necessarily need to have, anybody can use it.
You just use it.
Yes.
You just get on
If your
it and go.
TMA, if your TMA is not being used for that trail, you have to have written permission from that landowner.
That's correct. Roger's right. You have to carry that on your person.
So if the vast trail ends and I got to go across somebody's property 300 feet to the lake, I need their written permission.
That's not what was being said before.
No, it's true. It's not, it's specific to snowmobile laws. That is true. It's not like you can go hunt on somebody's land, but that's not posted. If it's not posted, you could just go on their land and hunt. You don't have to carry permission with you, but for snowmobiling, you do have to, it says it right in state statute. Yeah.
The only way, like the TMA acts as your written permission statewide.
Right.
And the only way around that is if we literally put the trail right to the last landowner on the lake and dead ended it on his property, his or her property.
But what about that state insurance that they were talking about? Does that liability automatically go to the state even without documentation?
Yeah, the landowner is protected, but the rider is not. So if a police officer wanted to sit there on the edge of the lake and, where the trail ends, if he sees 30 sleds going down that private trail, each one of those people would have to have written permission. Now, it's a technicality, but it's a real one, unfortunately.
It is, yeah. Again, this is one of the reasons why we didn't, we said we're not going to close it this year. We need to work on these things, and it's complicated. It is not an easy, but we're done. It's complicated. We got to figure it out.
And we have to be diligent this year. The ice is not safe. I mean, if you look at the game warden's post today that they put out, they're talking about the snow and the insulation. And I know that, like, I've seen clubs that have been posting about not going out on the ice. I think Ron Merrill, I think you had something out a week or two ago. You know, the trucks went through a couple of different bodies of water. An ice fisherman actually fell through a body of water yesterday, not on a snowmobile, just standing on the ice. So, you know, it is a very real thing this year because of that insulation. And maybe not so much, you know, in the north because they haven't had the snow that the south has had this winter, but.
I would almost feel better as a club administrator putting a dead end, like, so at the last junction, as I mentioned in my email, don't advertise that if you take 105 across the lake, or if you take 105, it's going to bring you to J. Don't advertise at the junction. Why can't we just put Bass Trail ends here, period? So that is now our local trail to our local landowners. That is all that it's there for.
You just can't maintain it. You can't groom it, because if Vast is paying for it to be groomed, that's the only thing.
No, I know, but I don't understand that. Like, what is the difference if it's a Vast trail? Like, Vast was started because a bunch of locals wanted access to the snowmobile trails. So why can't the locals, even the ones that live on the lake, have the right to have a groomed snowmobile trail to their backyard?
Yeah, I understand your question, but Vast was started 50 years ago. There's a lot. The world is different now. The litigation is different. People trip on your front steps and sue you for nothing, you know, and that's the unfortunate thing about the way that that society that we live in now.
Right. But I know here in this area, there's a few trails like that are just dead end local feeder trails. I don't know.
When 105 was closed in North Derby for us for 3 years, we groomed that because we had local members, only like, I don't know, 12, a dozen of them or so that lived on that. But we felt they've been paying dues for a long time. They're Vast members. We're going to go out there and we're going to run a groomer out there once a week or once every other week. I don't know why we can't do that to people that live on the end of the lake. The trail ends, period. End of story. Dead end. The trail ends here. If you go beyond this point, you were on a lake and that's your fault. I mean, it's even with a private trail, somebody mentioned it earlier, even with a private trail, a good lawyer can say, well, technically you took the trail and, you know, the private trail and you went on the lake. Like that to me is more of a sticky situation than just dead ending the trail. At the last junction, it says trail's dead end. You can't get to J Peak. The trail ends.
That last junction won't be a junction anymore. There won't be any signs there because there won't be any need to have signs there.
Well, yes, there would still be a junction. We have a three-way junction. And one of those ways goes down to the lake.
Right.
Right, but if it's not a trail anymore, that's not a junction.
Well, we want it to be a trail. That's my point. I mean, whether
you can't label it.
I think these are the things we're going to work on over the next several weeks. Because I think that there might be a way we you know, that's what we've asked, is that signs go dead end, doesn't go past here, Vast Trail ends. And if it goes down to Joe Smith, who happens to live near the lake, well, Joe Smith's a paying member. That's why we have a trail, because there's 37 people who access this trail to get on the trails. I think it's something that it's part of the equation we have to look at.
Don't you have to ask the insurance company this question? With
Yes.
the insurance, they're the ones that are going to be saying, yeah, that'll work, or no, that won't work.
Actually, Brian, I'm making myself a note right now that says, get a hold of Peter Ricker about grooming the trail. If
We can talk about it all night long, but if
Right.
they say, sorry, tough shit, then
You're right, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just making myself a note. So I'll email Peter Ricker tomorrow and ask the question.
I'll bet the next paycheck on it that they'll say no. I mean, that's what they're going to do. It's so easy for them to say no. Of course they're going to say
Just to let you know, Peter Ricker is a Vermonter and a snowmobiler. So our insurance agent. So he's been snowmobiling his whole life.
He probably doesn't want to drop a $220,000 policy either.
True.
Really.
So
I just
just a-
think we're gonna have a hard time getting the landowners to buy into the private trail thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that could be tough. Stan, did you have something you wanted to
Just
add?
a quick question. So, we're talking about paying for grooming if it's part of the grooming contract and program. But let's say we were to remove it from the grooming contract. And if the local club chose to groom that trail, like the local access trail to my house, gets groomed 2 or 3 times a year. The VAST doesn't pay for it. It just gets groomed because it accesses 4 or 5 houses down here that all access the main trail from it. But it's not part of the grooming contract. It's something that the club does and we do it to 2 or 3 other neighborhoods as well. Not part of the VAST grooming contract, but we do it to give members access to the trail system from their neighborhoods, so to speak. Would that help in any way? The fact that it's not part of a grooming contract, it happens to be groomed, but it's not part of the official grooming program. It's just something to think about. We
Yeah,
can't
I'll ask Peter in the email, our insurance agent.
Anything else? If not, I want to thank you all. I'm going to ask that the Long Range Planning Committee stick on for a couple minutes. Do we have a couple minutes, Cindy?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you,
I want to thank you all for your time and everything you guys do to keep your trails going. We know it's a tough road, but I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all your input tonight. And we will make sure we'll put out this meeting at the end of next one will be at the end of February, so that we can go over what we've done so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so-
Have a good day. See you later.
Nice.